Let's jump into yet again another Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. If you're interested in being part of the Transformer Slag Patreon, help support the podcast, let us know we're doing a pretty half-decent job giving you the daily news on Transformers and all the cool stuff and educating you about the Transformer world. Patreon.com/Protoman, or check the pinned comment or the description below. Come join the podcast, support us, let us know that we're helping you be entertained in these crazy times. And what does the Patreon get you? What do you get with your hard-earned money? What gets your name in the end credit scrolls at the end of every segment as a supporter for the patronage? Gets you access to the Transformer Slag podcast Discord, where we have a lot of cool stuff. We share deals, we share lore, we share all kinds of stuff. A lot of news breaks there first before it even hits the news websites. Depending on what tier you get, you might even get a little gift here or there in the mail. And of course, depending on what tier also, access to ask questions on the Patreon listener question, where we answer a question here live on the podcast and make a separate segment about it. We got one here from Cordion, and Cordion wants to know, hey Proto, hope you are fabulous. I have something that'll be interesting to be a Patreon listener question. Sometimes when you get those great gift finds at thrift stores, Transformers are sometimes in great condition, except sometimes they could be dirty, sticky, or rusty. What are some safe ways to clean those Transformers? Is it water or soap? It's the safest way to go about it, especially when it comes to labels and paint. What chemicals are safe? What about pressurized air? What tools or techniques do you use? There's a lot of different layers to that. Like when it comes to cleaning, I have like a 5-step system. I'll get into that. Pressurized air, that usually comes up when we're talking like dusting Transformers. And when it comes to dusting Transformers, and oh man, do I have history of dusting Transformers. I literally dusted over thousands of Transformer toys when I made my big move from my parents'. You could actually, on Twitter, if you probably just, look up my Twitter with the word dust, you'll see some before and after photos that are mind-boggling, because I came from a house with easily like 9 to 10 pets. So, but when it comes to dusting Transformers, I just use like a brush that's used for makeup. I find that that's the best for it because it's a fine brush. It's not coarse or something like, let's say, a toothbrush or something that could damage some more sensitive plastics. And I find it does an amazing job because it absorbs the dust too. The only advice that I should give when it comes to dusting, though, when you get the dust on the brush, because it'll stick to the brush, just wipe it somewhere, but don't blow on it, because if you put moisture from your breath onto the brush, it could transfer onto the plastic. And our bacteria is a lot more corrosive than you think, our little mouth bacteria. So try to avoid that. When it comes to cleaning figures, and I've encountered this a lot, again, I have a 5-step system, which is I try to use the least evasive stuff to the most evasive stuff. And so, like, when you're talking cleaning, there's actual physical dirt that comes from, whatever environment it was in, whether, sometimes I've had toys that sometimes a kid dropped chocolate on it or whatever, or some kind of paint residue or something got on the toy. Sometimes you have a case where it's just physical dirt from being in a location where it's in a basement and dirt gets on it and then it just sticks on from being there all those years. Sometimes it's what's called paint transfer damage, which is a lot of toys are in a toy box, and then one toy's paint transfers onto the Transformer toy from just clashing together. And then there's glue dirt, which is sometimes when you pick up stuff at stores, they put a sticker on the physical toy itself, and then you peel the sticker off, and there's glue residue. So let's go through that 5-step system and stuff that you could use. Number 1, least evasive one, is napkins with water. Try that first. It sounds simple, but sometimes that stuff could come off with just some very strong napkins. And I suggest napkins over Kleenex and stuff and paper towels. Paper towels are too expensive. Kleenex are too flimsy, but a good strong, packages of napkins. I mean, you get them for free from like McDonald's or something. You'd be surprised how much of a good job they do at just scrubbing out stuff with just water. Nothing else. No soap. I don't suggest soap. Soap could be pretty acidic, and a lot of soap that you buy has detergent in it, and that is extremely corrosive. And that's a whole other story. I'm pretty sure people saw the commercials for for soap that, like they're showing how bad a lot of modern soap is today. So I would avoid soap. Step 2, if that stuff doesn't work, here's another really interesting one that a lot of people don't do, but it's been something I've been doing for years, and I learned it from my dad with his toy restoration. A white eraser, meaning just like a regular eraser, but like the white ones, not a pink eraser or a fancy colored one, a white eraser. I find because the pink colored ones and stuff, they'll actually transfer the color of the eraser onto whatever you're trying to erase. But I find a lot of times when you have paint transfer onto Transformer toys that are on surfaces that are molded colors, some of the easiest ways to remove that paint transfer is just to use a white eraser. It'll actually just take it out very easily. And sometimes dirt too. It'll do a good job. Now the white eraser obviously has residue when you're erasing stuff, so be sure to clean that up afterwards. And then maybe again use a napkin with water afterwards just to clean off any kind of oils or residues that might stick on from the eraser itself, because the eraser itself does have all kinds of little vinyls and little particles that exist within it too. But I find it does just a great job just getting rid of paint transfer. Then we're talking step 3. Now we're talking sticker residue, certain paint residue that doesn't want to come off. The least evasive of the bunch, and it's my go-to for everything usually, is Goo Gone. Now, Goo Gone is something you could buy on Amazon. It's at Walmart. It's in hardware stores. It's a very low evasive, low acidic, still poisonous, still has some chemical compounds to it that could be considered acidic, but it's probably the least of the bunch. It's the most watered down. But its primary purpose is using it for removing sticker and sticky residue. That's why it's called Goo Gone. But I also found, using it throughout the years, that it's actually a pretty good cleaning agent too when you're trying to clean stuff that has paint. So I first discovered this because I had a Slave One Boba Fett Star Wars ship, and it had paint areas that were covered in dirt and grease. And I found that the Goo Gone was able to remove that without damaging the paint and removing the paint in the process. So it's probably the best one when it comes to cleaning. Again, if you didn't do the soap, the water and napkins and the eraser, it's probably the next best thing. That's probably the least evasive, that protects the paint but gets rid of the dirt. It's kind of that happy in between. And it's pretty easy to get. It's literally, you could find it anywhere. You could go to Walmart and it's there. And I find that I go through quite a bit of it. It's probably my biggest go-to for a lot of stuff. I have literally 2 bottles, full bottles of it right now under my sink in my kitchen, just because it's a go-to for a lot of times for cleaning toys. After that, now we're talking the more heavy-duty stuff. And this is when we're talking really stubborn paint transfer, really stubborn dirt, and everything in between that. So the first one, which is the lesser of the 2 evils, and when I'll explain what I mean by 2 evils. First, we're talking rubbing alcohol. Now, rubbing alcohol is pretty strong. It will remove paint. But it's the less crazy of the 2. It has ethanol in it, which is a little more tame. It's still pretty crazy. It'll still remove a lot of paint, but it's also good for cleaning. But I also suggest after you use that rubbing alcohol, then going back to the napkins and water, clean up that area afterwards so none of that rubbing alcohol is lingering on the plastic afterwards. It could damage it. And when you're talking the different kind of plastics today, like first of all, ABS, vinyl, PVC, they all will have different chemical reactions. I remember I bought this bootleg of Micromaster Hot Rod, and I wanted to remove the paint off of the roof because they painted it silver, and I wanted to do like a shattered glass color scheme on it. I used rubbing alcohol and didn't wash off the water, and it just ate through the plastic. Now, granted, it was a bootleg, and it was probably SABS or MABS plastic, which is probably the worst quality plastic. But just as a warning, depending on what Transformers you're doing it on, after you use rubbing alcohol, use the napkin and water, step 1, to get rid of any residue of that stuff. You don't want that stuff sitting on the plastic after you remove it. And then the situation where all else fails and everything I've said up to this point, it's still sticking on there, the most powerful of it all, and most of us men don't have it in our house, but you'll probably have to buy it unless you have a girlfriend or a wife. Nail polish remover. Now, nail polish remover, its main ingredient is acetone. This is the kind of stuff that's used in paint remover. It's pretty powerful stuff. It's stuff that when you open up the bottle, you're like, woo, it is some strong stuff. This stuff you got to be very careful with when you're working with any kind of plastics. I know in the community of Transformer guys who are also collectors of vinyl figures, whether it be like, Ultraman stuff or even My Little Pony, you do not use nail polish remover to clean your toys. It'll eat right through it. It is some powerful stuff. So it's something that really, if you're going to have to use it, it's got to be a really serious situation, and you got to consider the plastic surface that you're using it on. So ABS, which is what most Transformer toys are made of. ABS, PVC, avoid it. Vinyl, avoid it. PVC is soft stuff, vinyl is soft stuff. So really hard plastics, avoid it, otherwise avoid it. And that one is, same thing. After you use it, same thing. Napkin, water, make sure there's nothing left over there to do that, because that's a crazy thing. You also mentioned, and I'm actually going to add one extra that you didn't mention too, but you mentioned rust. Rust, honestly, the best thing that I could suggest with rust is, and even then it's not the best, because the few Transformers that do have rust issues, usually they're surface damage and there's not much you could do about it. You could, again, file down the rust and then hope to get it somewhat clean. You could use WD-40 to break it up a little bit and polish it. But you're talking screws or surface. There's not many times the rust is going to be a big thing. If you have rusty screws, I say take out the screws, put it in WD-40, polish it a little bit with, again, a napkin or somewhat abrasive kind of rag that you're going to not use again. And that's probably the best you could do, because otherwise you're better off just replacing. Rust is, in the mechanic world, when we're talking body shops and stuff where I come from, rust is cancer. So it's very rare that you could kind of reverse it without having to cut out a little bit in the process. And one extra one that I want to include too, that you didn't mention, is a lot of times when you get a lot of these thrift store toys, if they have something that's a battery related to it, there's very much a strong chance that the battery still might be in there. Especially like when I look at late Cybertron toys or animated, where there was battery gimmicks that were stored in the figures, which came in retail. It wasn't even added. It was, by the consumer. It was in there already. A lot of animated gimmick toys have batteries still in them. Those batteries, when they explode, they not to mention the gimmick doesn't work anymore because the battery's dead, but it also damages the pulls that the toy would normally rely on if you put new batteries in. And there is ways to fix those pulls when you have the battery acid all over the place. This goes back to our rubbing alcohol that we have. Take some rubbing alcohol, put it on some Q-tips, and really clean the hell out of those battery pulls and the spring. Let it sit there for a bit. You're going to hear sizzling. It means it's doing a good job. And then afterwards, just take some, again, back to those napkins and just clean off everything. This time around, don't take off the rubbing alcohol. Leave it on there so it continues to do its job long afterwards. And when those pulls are nice and clean, chances are the battery is going to be fine to work with it. Because a lot of times I've had people where they bring me figures, and this is even outside of Transformers. I'm thinking even like Toy Story with Buzz Lightyears that worked on batteries, just having all experiences from that. And cleaning the pulls on the back, because they would put batteries in, it doesn't work, but it's just something as simple as cleaning the surface of the battery pulls and the spring, and it making that connection so that everything could work afterwards. So that's a little extra one I wanted to include. But I hope that helps a little bit, because when you're talking like cleaning Transformer toys, the big fear too is also stuff like stickers. And stickers are the tougher one because, and built-in paint. And then we're also talking, yellowing. That's another conversation and subject. But it's something that those ones too, you have to kind of like dance around those. Yellowing, there's a whole process with reversing that. You could look that up online. The Star Wars community were the first to really revolutionize that because of their yellowing of vintage stormtroopers. And then, of course, that affects our world with our vintage Transformer toys that suffer from yellowing and greening, as we call it, because some of our blue Transformers turn green when exposed to sun. Discoloration. But that's all processes that could be reversed with, with all kinds of different chemicals and everything. You can look those up online. Those ones, I rather you watch those videos because they show you the whole process and the mixing of the chemicals and everything like that. And I feel that a audio podcast will not do it justice that a visual one could. And there's plenty of them out there. But I hope that helps a little bit. Again, it's the cleaning process. I always start with the eraser, because I find that that's the least evasive and it does 90% of the job. I sell like tons and tons and tons of used Transformers at TFCon. It is, I mean, the amount of, I've probably sold more used Transformers at TFCon than most people have ever owned in their lives, just to give you an idea. I've probably handled more Optimal Optimuses and G1 six shots than probably most people buy Transformer toys in a year. It's crazy, like just the amount, and top spins and twin twists. Oh my goodness. But I'm just trying to get at is, and messing with all of those, I've always tried to clean them up so that, people get the best product. I want them that when they, they come to a parts party or at a table at a convention, that they're getting a cleaned up, ready to go product that doesn't require any kind of tuning or anything afterwards. So I hear you. I've been down that road many, many times and still do it. Literally yesterday, I did the same thing. I was cleaning up a Beyblade stadium that, Beyblades, think about it. You have the Beyblades, they spin in the stadium, they hit all over the place, they bounce around, and the paint, because of the whole point of it is it hits everywhere, frictions, and it crashes everywhere, and it damages everywhere. I clean up those stadiums like as if they're brand new and sell them. And that's another Takara Tomy Hasbro product that I deal with. So it's an interesting subject that comes up, and it could be applied to more than just the Transformer hobby. So I'm happy to answer a question like this that Cardion wanted to know. And if you want to be like Cardion and be a patron and help support the podcast, patreon.com/Protoman. And I hope everyone learned something. I hope I answered Cardion's question properly. And hope you guys will be listening in the future, and we'll have some more news and everything to talk about here on the Transformer Slag podcast. Again, patreon.com/Protoman. Check the pinned comment. Check the description below if you want to find the link to help support. And rock out with the robots in disguise.